Problem 19 and 21, homework's 2.3.
Yeah.
Right. For 19, they want you to plug in points. And so for x squared plus x minus 6, I'm going to plug in a 0. If I plug in a 0, that's 0 and 0 minus 6 would just be minus 6. That's pretty easy. So then I put in a 1, and it'd be 1 squared plus 1 minus 6 would be 1 squared is 1, plus 1 would be 2, minus 6 would be negative 4, right? And then here I do negative 1 squared, which is 1, plus a negative 1, which would be nothing, right? And then, so the answer would be negative 6, okay? And so if we graph these points, we would come with a 0, negative 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Then we would graph a 1 and a negative 4. Then we would graph a negative 1, and we found that to be negative 6. Negative 1, negative 6, right? So it looks like it's going to go like this, and then like this, right? And if we did the math, we would find that that's probably not the case. It's probably coming down and back up. Okay? If we did the math here, we would find that that's really 2x plus 1 equals 0. So then 2x equals negative 1. So then x is equal to negative 1/2, which would put that right here, right? Remember the finding the vertex and finding the axis of sim? So that's why when you plug in points, it's really hard to tell if you're getting an accurate picture of the graph. Because these 3 points that we just graphed don't really show the picture of the graph, right? Then we would have to actually plug in the negative 1/2 and figure out where it was at. So trying to graph through plotting points is really tough. And so that's why we go to the next level, which is called factoring. Okay? Now you were supposed to learn factoring in Algebra 1. Right? And here you had Miss Jessica back in Algebra 1. She had a great job at teaching you algebra and linear algebra, but she only got through chapter 4 of the book. So chapter 6 was factoring. So you guys never learned factoring. So now you're expected to know factoring when you never learned it. Okay? Now I think I went over it a little bit in geometry last year, but only for like 1 or 2 problems. So if you only learned it for 1 or 2 problems, are you going to remember it? Probably not. So we're going to work really hard on factoring on this chapter, okay? Because we got to learn it. So we're going to factor this. We're going to do my 5-step method, but I'm going to show you how it turns into basically a 3-step method if there's no number out in front. Okay? So we'll start with the 5-step method, and the first step is GCF. And that means the greatest common factor. And so I'm going to look here and I'm going to see a 1 and an 11 and a 24, right? So and there's not an x in every single one, right? So there's no greatest common factor. The only number that goes into 1, 11, and 24 is 1, and that's not a factor, right? So it is a factor, but it's not one that we're worried about, right? So that means the GCF is done, okay? And so if the GCF is done because there's nothing out here, that means that there's no star. What I mean by that is, in my second step, I have this thing called parentheses star variable, okay? And the star is the number that's out in front. And if there's no star here, then there's no star here. And if there's no star here, then number 5 is what I call star cleanup. Okay? That means that number 5 is done. So if 1 is done, 5 is done, then all we really have to do is 2, 3, and 4. And that's why it becomes a 3-step method. Okay? So let's go ahead and put our parentheses and our variable. The variable in this case is an x. Okay? And because there's 2 x's, we're just going to put 2 here. An x and an x. If this were x to the 4th, this would be x squared and x squared. If it were x to the 6th, it'd be x cubed and x cubed. Right? Half of however many that are there. Half of 2 is 1, so it's x1 and x1. Okay? And that's the first step, which really took out 3 steps of our 5 steps. So now we got to do 2 more steps, okay? So the third step is we're going to do signs. Okay? And so the first sign comes straight down. Alright? So this sign comes straight down. And then I'm going to look at this sign, and this is going to tell me if these signs are the same or if they're different. If this sign is a plus, then they're the same. If this sign is minus, then they're different. Okay? Now I'm finding that this sign is a plus, right? This is a plus, so that means that these 2 signs are the same. That means that these 2 signs have to be plus, because they're the same. Okay? And that's the third step. And the fourth step, okay, is this thing called product and sum. Okay? Now the product is pi, and the sum is sigma. Okay? And in calculus, you're going to learn about product and sum. And in pre-cal, for those of you who move on to pre-cal next year with me, all right, my pre-cal right now is complaining about the fact that why do we have to do product and sum and productmation and summations and stuff like that, okay? So I'm just letting you know what product has to do with is multiplying. And what the sum has to do with is adding. Okay? And I'm planting a little seed so that when you see these signs next year in pre-cal, we'll be like, oh, this is productation, we're going to be multiplying. This is summation, we're going to be adding. Okay? With here, we're just using them as like a remembering thing. Something to remember things by. Right? And so, I have a product, which means I'm going to take this number times this number, which is 1 times 24. And then the sum, which is this middle number, 11. Right? And to find the product, I find 2 things that multiply to be 24. And to find the sum, I find 2 things that, in this case, add. I'm always looking at this sign. If this were a minus, they would subtract to be 11. But this is a addition, so they're going to add to be 11. So 2 numbers that multiply to be 24 and add to be 11. So give me 2 numbers that multiply to be 24. Any 2 numbers. 12 and 2. So, and always big number first. That's really important. Okay? Big number first. Okay? So what's 12 times 2? 24. What's 12 plus 2? 14. It's not 11, right? So that one doesn't work. So give me another 2 numbers that multiply to be 24. 8 times 3.
Oh, I was going to say 6 times 4.
You can do 6 times 4, right? Now, 6 times 4, or 6 plus 4 is not 11, is it? But 8 plus 3 is. right? So that means you're going to use 8 and 3. 8 and 3. Okay? And that's factoring. Now the reason why we factor it is so that we can set it equal to 0. We're finding the zeros. That's the whole point here. Finding where it crosses this x-axis. Right? Now this one's for this guy. But we're doing it for this guy here. Alright, so if we do this, it'll cross at x plus 8 equals 0 and x plus 3 equals 0. And then we solve, and we get x equals negative 8 and x equals negative 3. That's where it crosses the axis. Okay? So basically crosses the x-axis at negative 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and negative 3. Okay? We know it's smiling, so it looks like this, right? And halfway in between, it's going to somewhere be there. Does that make sense? We don't know how far down yet. We didn't figure that part out. All we figured out is this and this. That's it. Does that make sense? Okay? And that's 19.